Good evening, morning, night, afternoon, whenever you find a way to watch and listen to this podcast. It is me, Omar Shanti, the Burger Popper. Just coming back for just another off-season podcast. I know Jackson and I finally recorded our HBCU Legacy Bowl podcast this last week. I always have to think of like the reference of time whenever I post, whenever I set aside a recording to be posted later. So by the time this will be released, HBCU Legacy Bowl will already happened. So even after the game, just check out who we thought were standouts before the draft processes. Hopefully, we'll get a couple of HBCU draft picks in the draft, like Eric Hunter, quite a dandy, and then of course Curtis Allen, 2,000-yard rusher. But we're not talking about HBCU ball today. I'm joined by my good friend Bobby Wilson, the TNT College Football Podcast, who is very familiar with the region and more specifically the school that we are talking about. Pretty much one of the more intriguing schools slash stories of the FCS season. So, I mean, we're going to talk about Chicago State's first and only independent schedule before they join the NEC this next year, as they just released it last week. But Bobby, thank you for joining at this late hour. I always appreciate the flexibility and just your willingness just to go late and just record.
Absolutely. As always, Omar, thank you for having me. Always appreciate it. Looking forward to this conversation. I'm sure it's a topic that a lot of people are, I'll say, intrigued about. And whenever you have a new startup program, there's always some things that have to get worked out. And Chicago State is an interesting situation, that's for sure.
Yeah, interesting to say the least. And we are talking beforehand, just for reference, and I guess this is the way to start it. If we just go from the top, I mean, this is a program that resided in the Great West Conference in the early 2010s, and I know, Bobby, you are a college basketball first guy. Or basketball is your first love. Like again, like you know the Great West very well. The conference famous for not having an auto bid to the NCAA tournament, but having an auto bid to the CIT. So Chicago State was there, and then the WAC fell apart. Then they joined the WAC, which of course naturally wasn't a good fit. And then the WAC made their whole Texas overtures and moves, adding the teams from the Southland Conference. And then Chicago State left, which in retrospect maybe they should have just stayed in the WAC and just waited for that storm to blow over. But they were independent for a couple of years, and then now they're in the NEC, the Northeast Conference, which was in dire straits of its own, but has sort of weathered that realignment storm. Excuse me, but Chicago State was essentially a placeholder until the transitional schools were eligible for the NCAA tournaments in their sports, so the NEC could keep their auto bids. And then Chicago State too, part also somewhere in that time span from 2011 to 2026, there was an existential crisis where there was thoughts that the school wouldn't even exist. Period. Not even the athletic program. The school wouldn't exist. Period. Where their endowment, I think, was in the single digit millions, and somewhere along the line too, they decided to begin a football program. People were skeptical. I think in my heart I was skeptical of it, but I wrote about it like it was going to happen. And here we are in 2026. Chicago State is playing football. So that is a quick run through of why this is just such a crazy story. I don't know if I missed anything, Bobby, so I'll just hand it to you.
Well, just living here in the state of Illinois, finishing my high school days in that area in the suburbs up in Chicago. I've played multiple games in Chicago State basketball arena in high school. Their arena is fantastic. It's a beautiful, beautiful venue, and they did it. They've done a great job with that. But I mean, you laid the framework pretty well there. I mean, it's a lot of people. I think a lot of people understand or have read some of the issues that Chicago State has had as an institution, and they've found ways to work through it and get through it and everything. I've worked at some institutions that have really struggled financially as well, so I understand that aspect as well from that standpoint. But like you, when I heard that they were going to start up a football program, I was very skeptical. I'm like, okay, I know some of the things that, or I've read some of the things. I've talked to some people and heard some things about the institution. You're like, man, can they really make this work? And of course, hoping as a fan that, man, I really hope they can make this work because this is a great opportunity for an institution, one, to start up FCS Division One college football. But at the same time, too, like they're the only FCS program in Chicago. They're technically the only Division One program in the city limits of Chicago. I mean, I know Northwestern isn't terribly far, obviously. Um, yeah, they say that they're Chicago's college football team, but they technically Chicago State's going to be Chicago's only football team moving forward. But we could talk about that later. As a Detroit Lions fan, that makes me chuckle, but that's beside the point. Um, but no, Chicago State in this situation, I'm just happy to see that that it's happening, because working on the athletic side of higher education, like I have as a coach, um, I never want to see institutions and schools struggle. Um, many of the, I should, 3 or 4 of the schools in the previous conference that I coached at the Division 3 level have closed since COVID. So just to see Chicago State being able to do this um, is is something that genuinely makes me happy, because I want to see institutions in higher education succeed. So I'm really happy to see that this is working.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like the perspective that you come from, of course, with your coaching background, which I mean you've mentioned multiple times in our conversations, both live and off air. I mean, it is sad when an institution closes, but I mean, football can either it's a big gamble and it's paid off both ways, where it either hurts a school that's already struggling or can help it, but at least Chicago State's giving it a shot. I will say before we dive into the actual scheduling, I would have thought that Chicago State would have gone the Pioneer Football League route, where
Hmm.
like they're not having to hand out scholarships. But then to think about it, if you're playing in the Northeast Conference and you're handing out football scholarships, you still get access to FBS games, which there are none this year, but I would think that with the amount of schools that are playing that are in the area in the MAC, which we'll get to later on, just thanks to one of our fan submissions. Like just with that area, I would think that that would be part of the budget. I mean, if you look eastward to that conference, like Mercyhurst, they're playing 4 FBS teams. So they're bankrolling the program by playing football. So, I mean, I guess now, like after just looking at that approach, like I think that the Northeast, staying in the Northeast Conference with your other sports in football, I think it's probably a better move than the Pioneer Football League.
I think there's no doubt moving forward that that's probably the route they'll take as well. Playing multiple FBS games, I would think, to help fund things. Um, I know from my coaching days, I played Division 1. I coach basketball for people who don't know, but we would play Division 1 programs to get some money, and it would fund a good chunk of our budget. So I mean, it's a necessary thing that you need to do when you're at this type of level, in the things that you're dealing with. Um, but but it's intriguing. Like I know we'll get into some of those potential matchups moving forward, but I think there's a lot of intriguing things that set up for them when it comes to that.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of intriguing matchups this year and next year too. They have one set matchup for next year already, so they seem to be off to a good start. But before we begin, I just want to showcase my Chicago cuisine at 10:30 at night that I will be eating. Just have to get it in camera for a no context picture for social media. But looking at this schedule, man, I think it's interesting. I mean interesting. I don't want to overuse a word, but I think it's just really unique their scheduling approach compared to other independents, maybe like Sacred Heart, Merrimack that we've seen at the FCS level. I think it's just the fact that Chicago State's just trying to field a team, collect paychecks, and just garner some local interest and probably like save some money by hosting home games too, as we'll probably talk about later on a couple of these opponents that they're playing and some of the reputation slash not so good reputations that they do have. But I mean, Bobby, looking at any of these games, like which ones stick out to you? I guess maybe one home or a couple of ways. I guess just what sticks out to you with this schedule?
Well, I think the first game, week 0 against Roosevelt, Division 2 program in the GLIAC. I'm a proud GLIAC alum from Grand Valley State, so I'm happy to see that. Um, well, first off, before I start that, as you talked about Chicago cuisine, I'm from Flint, Michigan, Detroit, And so I'm a complete Chicago food hater. So that's beside the point. We do things better in the Motor City. I'll just say. But honestly, though, the Roosevelt matchup is intriguing because you have the two Chicago teams playing each other. I think that's really cool. I think it's a great thing. Obviously, it's a great thing for Roosevelt because it's giving them they're going to with it being Chicago State's first ever game. It's also going to give Roosevelt some great publicity too. So anytime you have your first ever game, I mean that's a huge deal. And for it to be another team from the city, that's a big deal for both programs. Um, some of the road matchups are. I guess the other home matchup I have to bring up is Norfolk State. Um, anytime you can, that's their FCS program that they're bringing to the city, and I think that it's huge for them to have for somebody to do that. Before the schedule was released, I questioned if if they were even going to be able to get anybody to come up to Chicago to play, and to see Michael Vick and that program be willing to do that. Kudos to them for that, for one, but also good on Chicago State for making that happen. I think I know Chicago State's not an HBCU, but there are a lot of connections in that world for them, and I believe that they can build something with that when it comes to a non-conference slate moving forward, playing multiple HBCU teams. I think that's something that they could really build on because I know there's a big um, influx of population from multiple HBCU schools in the Chicagoland area. So I think that's a really good thing that they could use moving forward to get some teams to come to them. It'll be interesting to see, obviously, the stadium situation moving forward. We'll see what that looks like, what they do there. I think the setup they have this year is great for them. Um, but then when it comes to the road slate, um, going to UT Martin, that second game for them is intriguing to me. I'm not saying that they're. I mean, you never know. I mean, UT Martin's in a conference that's not as highly thought of from the FCS standpoint. So I think there's an opportunity where they can at least go there and compete. Obviously, you look at some of the other games like Tarleton State and such. I mean, you know, kind of what you're getting into there. But there's some intriguing matchups on the schedule. There really is. I mean, the two late home games. I think you just kind of, from their standpoint, you hope and pray that they're able to happen with um, the the things that have transpired with both of those programs in the past. But we'll see. I mean, I think what they were able to do to put up 10 game schedule together like they've done, I give them a lot of credit. As a former coach, putting together schedules, it's not easy, especially when you're having to do it in a quick manner like this. I have to imagine that they were hoping the Sacramento State stuff would transpire and they'd probably be able to play them being an independent. Obviously, we know Sacramento State's going to be FBS. We know moving forward they're in the NAC. I can see why some of those NEC teams might not have wanted to play them this year, not want to have to make an extra trip to Chicago or such. So I can understand that to a point as a coach, you knowing that you're going to play them next year and moving forward. But yeah, I think that kudos on Chicago State, Coach Rome and that staff for being able to put this schedule together that they've been able to do.
Yeah, I think the point that sticks out the most that you just mentioned is the HBCU games against Norfolk State and North Carolina A&T, which they're visiting North Carolina A&T this year, but the next year North Carolina A&T makes a return trip to SeatGeek Stadium, which it looks like, I don't know if that's going to be the approach where they have one kind of showcase game against a HBCU or bigger program at SeatGeek Stadium because Gately Stadium should be ready, or the high school venue that Chicago State's planning to play most of their home games at. So that intrigues me, what you mentioned, because also too you have the Chicago Football Classic, which also invites HBCUs, but there's just a lot of
Mm.
legit things that kind of go with that, where they have to bring the bands, the schools have to bring the bands, have to participate in pep rallies. Just as I was looking at the contract the other day, with shout out to the Mississippi Valley State records department for providing that. I mean, it's not a bad deal. They get paid, like the schools that play in the Chicago Football Classic get paid $300,000, but of course there's no return trip for that. So maybe we'll see more home and homes, more games at SeatGeek Stadium, and maybe less of a ticket requirement as well too for the schools participating in against Chicago State. The games that intrigue me the most, I will say that I wrote about this earlier on Friday at the time of this recording, where you have schools like Roosevelt, Kentucky Christian, Fort Lauderdale, and Virginia Lynchburg. They're playing at an MLS stadium. That's just a really cool experience for all those schools, especially Fort Lauderdale and Virginia Lynchburg, with those schools, like you said, not having the best track records with playing games or just um, the product that they put out on the field, with them just not even being NCAA or NAIA members. Um, so I think it's just a great experience there. The games that intrigue me, other than like you mentioned, UT Martin, Tarleton, are Butler and Lindenwood. I can see those being particularly long-term series. Maybe every single year Chicago State goes to Butler, gives Butler a home
Mhm.
in the Pioneer League. Because if you're Chicago State, I think what you want out of your non-conference slate is either to fill it up with schools that are close by and will pay you money, or FBS schools, which we'll get into, a little bit later on. But Butler is a logical choice. Lindenwood is a nice private school that has a nice endowment
Mhm.
in St. Louis, in the St. Louis region. So like those are games that I can see lasting for a long time, and I think just fitting in that kind of philosophy that Chicago State might have to boost enrollment, to bankroll the athletic department, and I think that they could. I think the Chicago State. I mean, who knows what this team looks like, but I think that they can compete with North Carolina A&T. I mean, this might be a surprise, but North Carolina A&T has kind of been dreadful in the CAA the past couple of years. So that's one game that I'm excited to see how it turns out, honestly. But like you said, Bobby, like this is just hard to do just to make a schedule. Like I don't care if there's 4 Subdivision 1 teams and 2 NCCAA schools on here. Like just to come up with 10 games in less than a year's notice, like I commend Coach Rome and the athletic department.
Absolutely. I mean, like I said, I've been there. It's hard. It's hard to do. So kudos to them for that. And like you said, I think the Butler, like you said, talking about Butler, I think that's a great opportunity for them. That's not far away. Going to Indy, you could even look at Valpo moving forward. You wouldn't even have to leave or stay overnight. You could just go that day and play Valpo, vice versa, having them come to you. There's a lot of options that they have, like you said with Lindenwood. That's not very far from where I am, honestly. Be interesting to see moving forward with like Eastern Illinois, Western Illinois. I mean, Illinois State would be a stretch. I mean, that could be a game where you're getting some money from that standpoint, which would be obviously beneficial. But we'll see moving forward. I think that there's some real solid opportunities for them moving forward.
Yeah, I agree. And you mentioned the OVC slash MVFC schools, and something that I've like brought up and written about in the past is before it was settled where Chicago State was going to play, whether it be Gateway Stadium or SeatGeek Stadium. This brought up the idea of just these MVFC teams just essentially using Chicago State as a bowl game slash an alternate site home game where they bring all their fans. Particularly, I was thinking
Hmm.
Dakota State and South Dakota State, but I mean, with North Dakota State moving to the FBS, you kind of wonder like who's going to be that program that's going to be the anywhere, anytime, any place type program, because North Dakota State, and I think this might have been a symptom of the declining playoff attendance that they had throughout their dynasty. But they just became a program that would just take their fans anywhere. Just hey, you want to play against the Citadel? You want to go to Charleston? Like go do that. You want to play at Tennessee State at an NFL stadium? Let's go do that. So I kind of wonder if like maybe South Dakota State, if they find even more success in the next few years, win a few more championships, and they get kind of that title fatigue or that Nashville fatigue. If you see maybe South Dakota State making a one-off trip to SeatGeek Stadium, letting their fans experience Chicago playing at a different MLS stadium, a different one than Frisco. So that's something that I wonder. And like you said too, with like Eastern Illinois, Western Illinois, schools like that too, like those are easy trips to make that will kind of excite the fan base.
Absolutely, I agree with you.
So yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting to see in the coming years. I mean, no record projections or anything, but just a unique schedule. We did put out a question of any suggestions that people had for schools that they should play. So I'm gonna pull that up right now. I'm gonna try it. I'm gonna find that picture. Hopefully, find it quickly as I've switched to a Mac recently. Let's see if I can find it. Oh, there we go. Okay. And okay, so our friend More College Football was the lone responder. Actually, there was two responses. Another one was our friend CFB Red Zone, who said that Sacramento State, Chicago State was confirmed. I'm not sure if I believe that as much, but we did mention that earlier in the podcast. But when we asked about schools that he would like to see in Chicago State's future schedule, he said Northwestern Illinois, naturally, which I agree geographically, but we'll talk more about that. Why I just don't think that's a great idea. And then a group of five, like playing MAC schools. And I agree as well, just with, I mean, how I wouldn't say how dispersed the conference is because it is a literal no risk endeavor with Sacramento State joining the league and paying and bankrolling all the travel costs. But I guess Bobby, what do you think about more CFB suggestions for Chicago State's future schedules?
Well, I think especially early on, it's going to be the G5 route. The Power Four teams just aren't going to play until they build up more of a reputation. Just because of the sheer fact that they don't want to have a team come in there and it turn into IMG versus Bishop Sycamore. Just you just don't want that. And so it'll come in time. Um, Obviously, of course, you think Northwestern and Illinois because they're in state. But we'll see. I mean, you never know. You never know how that's going to transpire. But I think like the MAC certainly moving forward makes a ton of sense. All the directional Michigan schools, of course, not far trips. Ball State's not terribly far. You can go down the line. I mean, any of the Ohio schools in the MAC, obviously. Heck, going to UMass, Buffalo, you're already playing in the Northeast Conference. So what's another trip? I even look at it as a UConn fan, even potentially if they're making trips to the Northeast, we're there too. It'd just be interesting to see. I mean, like I said, the Power Four game is probably going to take maybe even 10 years till they get that, but we'll see. Crazy things happen. You never know in this current state of college athletics. Anything's possible. But I could really see like Eastern Michigan, Ball State, somebody like that scheduling them within the next couple of years. I could absolutely see that.
Yeah, I think the max reasonable in the next couple of years as well. And I think the fact that on two factors, looking at the Northeast Conference, that the schools in that conference typically demand lower payouts for FCS games. I think UMass a couple years ago was able to get both Wagner and Central Connecticut State for under 600,000, and that was on
Mm,
like there were some FCS schools that were demanding over 600 grand, and you
mm,
get pretty much a two for one. So that factor helps out, and of course, the travel might even reduce costs even more for Chicago State's payout. But I also too like I can't imagine that they're getting paid that much by Tarleton this year, that much by UT Martin to play. So I guess any six figure payout is just great for the program to help bankroll it. And it's not even like the program needs to be bankrolled as much because the travel costs um, aren't as wide as they were in the WAC. Like they're not traveling to Cal Baptist, they're not traveling to I'm trying to think who else was in the league before the Texas schools took over. They're not traveling to Mexico State. They're not going to those
mm.
schools. So, I mean, even then, like I don't think the pressure is there to get a huge payout and play an FBS school. And I will say, I think it's in the Northeast Conference's best interest to kind of avoid those games against Power Four schools because it's just
Hmm.
not the best publicity. Like just thinking a couple years back, I think Miami beat Central Connecticut State 69-0. I know the one that pops up in my head is the Wagner game against Syracuse a couple years ago, where they cut the game short because Syracuse was up 49-0 on Wagner in the first half. So I mean, maybe we'll see a Power Four game at some point. I do want to see it. I do want to see it at some point. So I hope it's not an ever. But at this point, like it just um, this would not be the best outcome for them. But I agree completely with the MAC schools. Honestly, even Kent State. I feel like out of all the MAC schools, I think Kent
Hmm.
State
Yeah.
might be most likely just with
Hmm.
everything budgetary with them. A team with a low payout, team nearby, a home game that's easy to win because they usually play three different Power Four teams. Like I think Kent State would probably be the first FBS opponent that they ever play if I'm a betting man. But I'm not a gambling man. That's one thing there.
Well, another thing that I think about too is like UTRGV having a startup program in kind of a different situation. Of course, I mean they've really pumped a lot of money into it, and they had a very successful year this year too, even in the Southland. Um, but you just kind of think of that like I'm almost certain that they're playing an FBS team this year. I want to say it's either UTSA or Texas State. Um, So that's quick for them. But again, they've pumped a significant amount of money into everything that they've been doing there, and that institution is on the rise as well. So they're potentially in a bit of a different situation than Chicago State is. But that's what came to mind too. Thinking about them is like, man, they've kind of made this rise rather quickly. I'm not saying Chicago State's going to do that, but you never know. But the potential's there.
Yeah, it definitely is. And I think when you have a region, like you bring a good point, when you have a region that loves the sport and is particularly talent rich and also isn't sharing with anyone, like that is
Mhm.
just all conditions for takeoff, especially in a conference like the NEC, which I'm surprised UTRGV had such a great start that it excuse me, that it did in the Southland Conference because that's a competitive football conference. That's not to say the
Mhm.
NEC isn't competitive, but I mean, it lacks the power. It often has a tightly contested race, and it's on the bottom kind of level, the bottom, I guess, the bottom echelon of the FBS. And that's not through any. It's not to take a dig at them. That's just the nature of the institutions. Like they're smaller private institutions. They only offer, I want to say, like 45 to maybe 55, or like the bare minimum of scholarships that you're allowed to have. So I think like Chicago State is in a good position to compete. Especially like having access to those athletes too that are in the Chicago area. I'm inclined to think that Chicago State will win almost every recruiting battle in the city of Chicago, or even you extend it, to your old stomping grounds, Bobby, to Detroit. I'm inclined to believe that they'll win most of those recruiting battles, if not all of them, stretching all the way to Pittsburgh. You know, um, where Duquesne, Robert Morris are. Like, so, I mean, yeah, like I'm excited. I'm not as I won't say like I'm not gonna go on a hot take and say that with schedules like this and with the NEC that Chicago State's gonna be instant power in the NEC, but I wouldn't be surprised if they compete and within a few years they're maybe a 4-7, 5-7, if not even a 6-6. So I mean I wouldn't be surprised.
I agree with you absolutely. I think they're in a situation joining that league like you laid out. I mean, you just it is what it is, and they should be able to step in and compete um, from the beginning. I don't think they're going to step into that league and just get not be able to handle themselves. I think one they have a good coach, so I think that's obviously very helpful. But I think that they've set themselves up well to join that league next season and at least be able to compete at a good level against those programs.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and I think too, just goes back to like what we were talking about like earlier on. I mean, while the PFL would have been, the Pioneer Football League would have been ideal, I don't think they went wrong at all, just
Mhm.
sticking with their Olympic sports home in the Northeast Conference. So we'll see with this schedule. It's kind of hard though as we come to a close, as we come close to a close. It's kind of hard to measure like how Chicago State competes with the Northeast Conference because we didn't even go over this really, but there's not even a Northeast Conference school on this schedule, which
Mhm.
might kind of reveal some kind of unrest, some leadership challenges within the Northeast Conference, some philosophical differences, which I we'll just have to wait until 2027 to see where Chicago State stands or where they or where we think that they'll compete in that conference in the Northeast Conference.
Absolutely. And excuse me, their women's basketball program is doing fairly well this year in the NEC. They're middle of the pack. Um, Top of that league is very competitive. Like FDU is a tremendous basketball team, and they've fared um, pretty well against those teams. And the men's team has done fairly well recently as well. I mean, they're competing against those programs, and they're not a laughing stock in that conference. So I expect that to also be the same in football moving forward.
Yeah, you mentioned the basketball programs. I should note that Chicago State did play in the CBI in 2024. Great moment for them. And they also have a transitive win against Gonzaga this year. I haven't really followed college
Yeah,
basketball. I was intrigued to see that. Like that's so cool.
yeah. My team, Michigan, beat Gonzaga by 30 or 40, so we'll roll with that.
So Michigan and Chicago State have they I mean, who knew that they would have something in common this college
National
basketball.
title game.
Yep. National title game. I think I'm not sure if the NEC eliminates schools from the conference tournament, but um, I mean, there's still a chance. I mean, at least they're not eliminated from the tournament. So
Anything can happen.
yeah, can't sleep on the NEC, especially against the Big Ten in the tournament. With yeah,
Yes.
and Purdue.
Yep.
But
Absolutely.
But I think that draws. I think that's everything that we plan to talk about just regarding the schedule. So Bob, I'm going to give you the floor just before we close, just to promote anything you want, shout anyone else you want, and just put a bow on it.
Well, as always, Omar, thank you for having me. Really appreciate it. I always love our discussions on air, off air. As always, everyone, feel free to follow me, TNT College Football Podcast, Twitter X, it's at TNT College Foot One, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, you can just TNT College Football Podcast. Um, do a lot of work there nationally. Do a lot of UConn stuff. Pretty soon, it's the off season, so preview season's coming. And I think a lot of people know me from that side of things, previewing every FBS team. Um, so got a couple more teams added to that list this year. So 138. I'm looking forward to that. So um, God bless my wife for allowing me to do that.
Yeah, that could not be me, and nor do I want it to be me, Bobby. No offense. I'm glad that you're doing it. Yeah, especially with the transfer portal. I definitely do not envy you. Yeah, that's just
The
tough.
one window has made it easier, though.
Yeah, it has. And then you have stuff like Thomas Hammock going to NFL.
Slightly.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, it makes it like a little better, but then like the coaching changes too, which it's just gonna happen more in the coming years with guys
Mhm.
deciding almost in March, like I don't want to do this anymore, and they'll just. I mean,
Yep.
I don't blame
I
them.
can't blame them. I don't blame them.
Yeah, I can't. Yeah, I've been seeing things about how recruiting is nowadays, and I'm like, yeah, yeah, I just don't know. I mean, I can't relate.
Hmm.
Can't try to care as an Army fan. I just feel bad for the other 135 programs, not counting the service academies. I just feel bad for them, honestly. So, yeah, like, I mean, that's just college football now, though. I mean, we love it, so just have to adapt to it. But thanks again, Bobby, for joining late. Really enjoy the discussions, like you said. I mean, I have the same sentiment, and look forward to more conversations in the off season too, as well, and just reading those previews and just catching up, so I don't have to do a lot of homework. and just getting ready for the season because it's coming close. I mean, we are less than 6 months away from week 0. I mean,
Less
very
than 200 days.
yep, yep, less than 200 days. Like, yeah, I mean, just a big milestone too. And it'll only feel quicker with the UFL, with arena leagues and everything, just filling our football quotas until the season comes. But until next time, everyone, thank you for joining. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Peace, love, and soul in the Burger Popper. And Lord bless you, Lord keep you, make his face shine upon you, and be gracious to you. Bye.